but of course Frank Taylor was very familiar with him. He was
Right. Now,
of course dating his sister.
Right. Right. Now, Bill never lived here after the war, so it would have been just on visits, I guess. That you got acquainted with him. Okay. Okay. Did you know someone named Faith Baldwin?
Faith Baldwin.
She was Mott's secretary for a time.
My brother represented Faith. She was from Bemis Point, I think. But I didn't know her.
Okay. I'm sorry, your brother's name was?
Ross Weeks.
Okay. And did you practice law together?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, we weren't in partnership, but we practiced in adjoining offices.
Right. Would you have any idea if Faith Baldwin is still living, or?
No, she isn't.
Okay. Any family that you know of?
No.
Okay.
There is a Baldwin family, whether they may be related somehow. They're in town. Let's see. Well, one is connected with the Roger Tory Peterson Institute. I think it's Mark Baldwin. Is that it?
That's right, Mark Baldwin.
I think he may, and his parents. Let's see. What the heck is his? Can't think of what his offhand. What his father's name?
Okay. But they may be related, but maybe not.
Could be.
Okay. What about the name Minturn?
Minturn. Oh.
Minturn.
Yes. Well, they had Long Point. The Minturns. They.
I'm sorry. What is Long Point?
Long Point is just above Bemis Point. It's a long point that goes out into the lake.
Snow State Park.
And they had a beautiful home out there. And unfortunately, you give it to the state, and the state doesn't take care of it, just like Bainbridge Colby, who was Secretary of State under...
Sure.
He gave his home to the state, and they let them deteriorate to the point they both had to be destroyed. Isn't that something?
It's so, penny cheap, pound foolish.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just a shame. Now, the Minturn Long Point house is on the north side of the lake. Mott had a place.
Yeah, he was at Driftwood.
He was at Driftwood, okay.
Yeah, that's just halfway up the lake.
Okay.
Halfway to...
Right, so Driftwood, Bemis
Minturn.
Point, and then
then Long Point, yes.
Okay. Okay. Were you ever at the Mott place at Driftwood?
Way back. But I can't remember much about it.
Okay. I think it burned. Do you remember that?
No, it could have. I think that's where Dan Lincoln finally got that property, didn't he?
It is the same
Is that
property,
it?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. But I think it's a reconstruction. The Mott structure
That's...
didn't make it to 1930, I think. Okay. How did Bob Jackson get rich?
Get rich?
Yeah. I mean, at some point he clearly becomes very prosperous, and he builds the house with the pillars, and is comfortable for the rest of his life. Was that just
I imagine
a dollar after another saving it, or was there a big victory that
I don't know, but I imagine it was a lucrative practice that he had,
Mm-hmm.
and that's very possibly. I don't think he inherited it.
Oh no, I know, I know he didn't inherit. Did you know anything of his parents or his
No,
background?
no.
Okay. He won a big case. The Salisbury Axle Company. There was litigation about the sale of it, and basically the buyers were trying not to make the last payment on the deal. It was a large amount of money. Jackson represented the seller, and they were successful. And at the time, I think it was one of the bigger verdicts, maybe the biggest verdict in this part of the state. And it's right about the time he buys the property and builds the house. What's the name of the street?
On Fairmount Avenue?
On Fairmount Ave, right. So I'm wondering if that was the sort of financial breakthrough.
Well, I have no knowledge on that.
Okay.
But that Salisbury Axle Company is that was the one that had the automobile, wasn't it?
Yes, they did.
That was Sam Carlson, the mayor of the city, was selling stock in it to so many of the Swedish people, and because he knew it was going to be a good company to invest in. And then when it went broke, he and Ernie Cockcroft, his corporation counsel, were worried about his being reelected. That's what I was telling you at the Historical Society meeting.
Great story, yeah, tell us there.
And so Cockcroft was a cagey sort of a guy, nice guy, very intelligent, but he was a corporation counsel for Sam Carlson. And they wondered, well, how are we going to get out of this? Because all the Swedes that had invested in it were very upset about Sam Carlson. So they devised a plan that the day before election, they put these pamphlets on the doorstep of all the Swedes up on Swede Hill and wherever they were, said, get the Swedes out of City Hall, vote for whoever the other guy was. Boy, that really got the
Rally the troops.
Swedes back into their Sam Carlson's fold. So he won hands down on the next election, but they feared that he was going to be defeated.
That's fantastic. Let's jump ahead. That's the Jamestown phase, and that's one more person, Charles Samuels.
Samuels? The Samuels Hotel, probably.
Hotel, opera house, charities, businessman. Not quite clear on when he died.
I have no idea about him. Only that that was quite a hotel.
Okay.
Oh, a beautifully appointed hotel. The dining room, and they had a grill, and it was really the nicest place to eat, and also to have a hotel room if you wanted a hotel room. That was before the Hotel Jamestown building.
Right. Okay. But you don't know if he overlapped with Jackson in any way.
No, I haven't. Yeah. It would probably be in the history books. So you've probably looked at the history books
Okay.
at the Fenton Museum.
Right. Now you go to Colgate, and you're there for 4 years
No,
or not?
2.5 years.
Okay. Tell me about that.
And then I went to George Washington in Washington, D.C. for 1.5 years.
Okay. Did you get a degree from Colgate, or you just?
No, from George
Okay.
Washington.
Okay.
But I wanted to go to Washington because as a pre-law student, I thought that would be an ideal location,
Okay.
because our classes were in the morning, so the afternoon was free to do whatever we wanted. So we usually went up to the Capitol for committees or the Supreme Court or
Wow.
Congress, the Senate. I remember Huey Long. He jumped from one side of the Senate to the other and waving his arms when he'd speak.
It sounds like something of a version of what Albany was for Jackson during the
Mhm.
year he went to law school. Maybe it was for your father when he was in Albany. You know, classes plus the courts, the legislature. You know,
Could be, yes.
that's interesting.
But that was an ideal place for pre-law.
Right. So you graduated from GW in what year?
35.
35. Okay. And Jackson had moved to Washington in early 34, and was working, as you said, at Revenue.
Mm-hmm.
So tell me about your seeing him in Washington.
Well, of course, just about every place we went, we had to walk.
Mm-hmm.
There were streetcars. But from where I lived, it was near enough to the office buildings, and I just took it upon myself to say, well, I'm going to go up to see Bob Jackson. And which was very rewarding because he was so personable and gracious and seemed to be happy that I came to visit him.
Where was the office? In the Treasury building?
Well, that's 50 years ago now. It's more than 50 years ago.
It's almost 70 years ago.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know.
Okay.
Probably in the Treasury building.
Yeah, I think just next door to the White House, right there at 15th in Pennsylvania.
It was while I was down there that the Supreme Court building was constructed.
Right.
So I watched that, the construction of the Supreme Court. And the Archives building, now they're old
Right.
buildings, so to speak.
Right.
But I saw them being constructed. So where I saw Bob in his office, I'm not quite sure.
Where were you living? You were living downtown somewhere?
Yes, I was just up at the university.
Oh, okay.
Now the university is spread all over
Right.
down, so it may not be exactly the
Somewhere in the Foggy Bottom area.
Mm-hmm.
Was Bob Jackson involved in the Andrew Mellon litigation during that time period?
I couldn't tell you. No, I don't know.
What was your sense of where he'd landed in the government? Was he a big shot, a medium shot? What was his setup? How do you remember it?
Well, that's hard to say. I mean, I do remember the office that he was in was spacious. Oh my golly, what a big office area he had, and a big desk. Beyond that, I don't recall. except that he made me very comfortable to come. Seems to me there was another fellow that the first time I went that was with me from Jamestown. His name was Alexander Corsilius.
How do you spell Corsilius?
Corcilius. Corsilius.
And is he still with us?
No, he lives up near Geneva, New York.
Oh, okay.
I don't know whether he's still living or not.
Okay. And was he also a student, or was he just?
Yes. Yeah, we had gone to George Washington to become students,
Okay.
but he'd come from Hobart College, like I'd come from Colgate. So he decided not to stay in Washington. He went back to Hobart.
Okay. How many times do you think you visited Jackson during
But I did
at Revenue?
twice.
Twice. Okay. And then, did you go to law school at GW? Or did
No, I went to Cornell.
Okay.
That was for 2 years, and then I finished up at the University of Buffalo Law School,
Okay. So you received your law degree in what year?
1939.
Okay. Now, while you were in Washington, was your sense that Jackson was briefly serving in the government and soon to return to Jamestown, or had he embarked on something that might last a long time?
Well, no, of course there was no sense of that at all. It's hard to say. He was with the Internal Revenue Office, and I couldn't foresee
Right.
the future at all, so I wouldn't want to comment on that, really.
Do you recall if he had moved his family?
No, I don't recall that.
Okay. Because for a phase that he was commuting and Mrs. Jackson was here with the children, and
I would
then-
suppose so. Hmm.
Okay. Once you go to Cornell, Buffalo, back to Jamestown, did you see much of him?
I don't think so. But
I mean, they would come to visit.
Mm-hmm.
Summertime,
Yes.
holidays.
I would see him in my uncle's office because he would stop in to see my uncle whenever he'd come back to Jamestown.
And do you remember if that was when Jackson was Solicitor General or Attorney General, or
No,
can you sort of? Okay, but
I don't remember.
okay. They didn't sell the house on Fairmount Avenue until he was on the Supreme Court.
Is that wrong?
I think 1941. I don't know if that helps you place any of this stuff, but
Mhm.
I think they were renting it. I think somebody else was living there, so it wasn't sitting empty. But they had another. I guess they had a place on the lake somewhere. Did you know that?
Well, he had interests in the Lakewood area because where he'd have his horses. I remember the field where he'd have his horses, and so it's possible that he might have had a home up there, but I'm not sure. I don't
Okay.
know.
And I'm not sure about after he moved to Washington, but before that point, he had a cabin cruiser on the lake. Do you remember knowing about that?
No.
Okay. Did you ever visit him at the Supreme Court in later
No.
years?
No.
Okay.
Wish I had,
Right.
but didn't.
Now, once the war starts, well, did you have military service or?
I went into the Navy.
Okay.
And I spent my time a year in Key West to begin with, and then 7 months in Miami in the Naval Headquarters office there. Then I was shipped out to the South Pacific, leaving from New Orleans in one of the new transport ships and through the Panama Canal and then out to the New Hebrides Islands, Espiritu Santo.
And what kind of work, what kind of action did you see?
I was in the Naval Headquarters office at Espiritu Santo for, gosh, almost a year and a half, I think. And I was anti-submarine warfare officer, the head of that.
What was your naval rank?
Lieutenant.
Okay. And were you out there for the duration of the war?
Yes, I contracted a skin disorder, as so many of them did, and then they shipped me back, and the war ended as we were crossing the international date line. So I ended up in San Francisco, and it was a month at Yosemite Park
Oh.
in the Ahwahnee Hotel, which
Sure.
was turned over for the Navy rehabilitation.
That's fascinating. I was out there last summer.
Oh, at the Ahwahnee?
Well, no, I was staying in a tent, a platform tent in the Curry Village.
Oh.
So in the valley, a half mile or a mile from the Ahwahnee,
Mm-hmm.
but a little bit down toward the Half Dome end of the valley.
Isn't that delightful out there?
It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
I think it's a little bit spoiled from the days when you were there.
Yeah, I'm
'Cause there's
sure.
a lot more tourist activity and some of the development, but it's just a breathtaking place. As a place to convalesce, that's a pretty
That's
good.
a good place to convalesce.
Right. Now, had you been married before
No.
the war? No. Okay.
No.
Okay. So then, from Yosemite, you make your way back. You leave the service,
Well,
or no?
not yet, but
Okay.
the treatment they were giving me didn't clear up the skin disorder.
Oh, okay.
So they shipped me to the St. Albans Hospital in Jamaica, New York.
That's where I work.
Is that right?
Well, St. John's is in Jamaica Estates.
Oh,
So I'm.
well, the day I left Yosemite, the skin trouble cleared up. So when I was in St. Albans, I had nothing to do really except to report in every day, and then that's when I went up to Troy, New York, where my wife-to-be was teaching college at Russell Sage. And it was actually during my still convalescing in St. Albans that we got married at Hamilton, New York, where Colgate is.
Okay. You had one good convalescence after another.
Yeah, gee. And it was shortly thereafter that I received my discharge papers and went back to Jamestown. But she continued teaching. She was teaching at Russell Sage, so she had to complete the year.
And here you've been for a few years since.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
how much, I mean, just a guess, I guess, how much did you see of Bob Jackson in that post-war period?
None, I don't think.
Okay.
I don't recall.
Okay.
I don't recall.
You obviously knew of his work at Nuremberg.
Oh, yes, yes.
But do you remember ever getting a chance to talk about that with him or
No,
hear him talk about it? Okay.
no.
Okay. Was he happy with his life, as far as you know?
Was he?
Was Jackson happy with what he'd accomplished and what he'd
Well,
attained?
That's a speculation. I assume very much that he was happy and satisfied with what he'd gone through and satisfied with the fact that he was an associate member of the Supreme Court. He was a down-to-earth person. I mean,
And didn't change in that respect.
no, I don't think so. No. He was a wonderful person in every respect.
This has been fantastic. What else should I be asking you
Gee,
about Jackson or his time or Jamestown?
gosh, you covered the waterfront.
Well, you are the waterfront. You.
Oh, God.
Did you know anything about a company called the International Railway Company?
Welding?
International Railway.
Oh, railway, no.
Yeah.
No.
Apparently in 1918 he worked in Buffalo for a firm. Maybe you've touched this, John?
No, I didn't touch on this.
You know, there's a firm apparently he worked for in Buffalo in 1918, a little before you, called Penny, Colleen, and Nye. Does that ring any bells?
No, I was interested in that remark in the paper of the museum.
Yep.
You know,
That's what triggered this.
could I excuse myself to go to the restroom and then I'll
Sure.
be right back.
Okay.
Right around the corner, Stan.
Okay.
Pittsburgh person who Jackson's father might have worked with or for. David with H. Harine Harine or Harine.
There was a Karen with a K from Frewsburg, but that may not be the one that you're talking about.
Okay. But it was Karen Harine from Frewsburg?
Karen. Gee. Have you talked to Bill Cass at all?
Not about this.
Hmm.
But I will.
Yeah, I think. Yeah. Karen.
Okay.
And there was a Karen that lived in Frewsburg. It seems to me that he was very prominent in the church. Oh, well, I can't tell you too much. She was a very splendid person. Quiet. No, Bob Alessi. Have you talked to the Alessis at all?
No.
He represented her estate. Remember?
Oh,
I don't know.
We've talked about
Yeah, we've
this.
talked about it. I think Bob.
Yeah.
I don't know. Just
Got a little complicated.
Yeah, that estate got complicated.
yeah,
Bob is happy to talk somewhat.
yeah.
Okay. Now she went to Washington with Jackson
Mm-hmm.
and worked with him for 6-7 years, Justice Department, Supreme Court, and then she even went to Nuremberg for the first little piece.
She did go.
She did go.
Oh.
She in London?
Yes, London. Right. She never made it to Nuremberg. The first summer was London before they got to Nuremberg.
Oh, I see.
But I think she'd been planning on leaving Washington to come home to Frewsburg or Jamestown right at the time Jackson got appointed to the Nuremberg project. So she agreed to help him out for the first bit. But then she came home and I guess spent the rest of her life here.
I knew her brother very well. He was a member of the lodge, Bertrand Sternberg. But I didn't know too much about her except seeing her as his secretary.
Right. Did she work for anyone as a secretary when she returned to Jamestown?
I don't know.
Okay.
No, I can't give you any information about her, really.
Okay.
Now, whether Bertrand Sternberg is still living, I'm not sure. Let me look in the telephone
Okay, Stan, I'll get that. Stan, I'll find it.
directory. Yeah.
I think the answer is no.
Well, I think he must.
Okay. How do you spell Bertrand?
Bert, B-E-R-T, R-A-N-D, Bertrand.
Bertrand. Okay. Well, let's finish up with that Frank Mott piece that you referred to earlier.
We're not on the.
No,
No, I'm shutting down.
Well, I guess he was a homosexual. Of course, that's the report. And,
Okay.
in those days, homosexuals didn't go down well.
Mm-hmm.
So that's was my understanding that sort of nipped him in the bud when they discovered it.
That came to be known in the community.
Mm-hmm.
Was there some incident or some?
I don't know anything about the incidents that the barber, well, he'd feel around when the barber was clipping his hair. I don't know, but that was the phase that I'm.
Okay.
Other ones could probably elaborate on it,
Okay.
but I.
Do you know if there was actually a falling out between Mott and Jackson?
No, I don't know about that.
Okay. Or if they just sort of
Mm-hmm.
took separate paths?
Well, of course, Jackson would be probably older than him by how many years I don't know, and it would be only natural for somebody to make their acquaintances with other attorneys. Like Herrick was quite a guy. Do you remember Herrick?
I don't know Gerald, no.
Herrick lived up on Buffalo Street, and of course Ernie Leet lived up on Houston Avenue, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
And Durkin lived up on Regent Street. And Durkin had 2 children, son Charles and daughter Elizabeth, I think, Elizabeth. And his wife came from Allegheny, New York, down near Olean.
Okay.
And Gerald Herrick is no relation to Wayne Herrick.
I think so. I think there's a relationship
Is
there.
there? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Stan, thank you so much for all this
Well.
time and these memories. I mean, you're really extraordinary. You're very precise. You've got the whole span here, and
Well.
it's very helpful.
How you're going to